Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today we're going to set the Succah Daf Yud Aleph. We're going to begin on the top of Yud Aleph and Aleph, the second line from the top, the second Lashon Acher. We saw in yesterday's Daf, in the first Lashon, that when it came to Kinu, that has 4 poles, this type of canopy is permanent in nature, and therefore, even if it's less than 10 tefachim, one who would go in such a canopy under a Sukkah would not fulfill their obligation. However, when it came to a kilo, we did make a distinction between the kilo being less than 10 as opposed to being above 10. Also, when it came to a house and a sukkah are also a keva, so even less than 10 tefachim will create an ohel like the kinaitis. So again, let's see the Lashon Acher. Amri Rabbi Yehuda, Amr Shmuel. Mutar yashem bekilas chasanim. You're allowed to sleep in a kilas chasanim, another type of canopy, but sukkah fi she'ein lo gag, because it does not have a roof. Afal pi shegavo asar. This actually flips it. The kino, we said that it has 4 poles, and we said even if it's less than 10 is a problem. This, when it comes to kilos chasanim, it says that because it has no roof, that is the reason why it's acceptable, even if it's above 10. So similar to the Shachvatari in yesterday's daf, but here instead of being mechal between above and below 10 tefachim, here we're saying a roof or not a roof. Toshma, naklitin shnayim knafis arba. The difference between these 2 types of canopies, one has 2 poles, and one has 4. Piris al gabi kinaifis psula. If you spread a sheet over this 4-poled kino, then it will tassel. Al gab naklitin ksheira. Novad shloyi hinaklitin gaboin min amita sartvachim. So we see that the distinction is whether it's above or below 10 tefachim, which is mashma hagaboin min amita sar psula. Al vishin lagag. It's mashma that even if it is above 10, it would still be an issue, even if it doesn't have a roof. How can we make a distinction between a roof or not a roof? Well, the distinction is more than less than 10 tefachim. For instance, no. Shani naklitin de kviye. When it comes to the naklite, that is kviye, and therefore that's the reason why we make a distinction between 10 or less than 10. 1 second. Ikvi will have a kinaifis. That should have the same din as a kino. Now we said when it comes to kinaifis, even if it's less than 10, it's a problem. No, like gabi kinaifis will kavi. Gabi kilo kavi. It's kind of like in this in-between area. The kino is the most keva, and therefore it's 4 poles, and even if it's less than 10 tefachim, it's problematic. When it comes to it, the neklite amita, we say that it depends if it's more or less than 10. If it's more than 10, even without a roof, it's a problem because it is more keva. However, when it comes to the kilos chasanim, which is more temporary, so therefore we say, provided that it doesn't have a roof, even though it's more than 10, it's okay. Darsh Rabba Bar Rav Huna. Mutalisha Mekila Afavi Sheshel Gag, Afavi Shigabo Asara. Tremendous chiddush. Even if it's above 10 tefachim, even if it has a roof, doesn't matter, you can still sleep under that, and it's not a problem, you can still be sitting in a sukkah. Come on, who's that like? Rabbi Yehuda. This will see this drush also late in the beginning of the second parak, that a temporary ohel, which is this canopy, is not going to be mavatal the oil keva. So the bigger picture is the sukkah, and therefore the smaller thing inside of it doesn't really do anything. So we saw in the beginning of the second parak this Mishnah that says that if a person sleeps under a bed, it's okay, even though it's l'chayru. What do you mean? That should be an ohel. The bed, the mattress is an ohel. No, because of the principle of Rabbi Yehuda, the lo aseh ol arayim avatal oil keva. The lema halach Rabbi Yehuda. So what we just said in the halach Rabbi Yehuda. Now, iyam halach Rabbi Yehuda havamina tani milimita dulagava suya. Maybe you would think that only comes to a bed, because the whole purpose of a bed is for the top. It's not created for an ohel for someone to go underneath, and therefore maybe only there we would say it's not an issue. However, when it comes to a kila, that it's actually made to go underneath it. So maybe you would think the din is that would be an issue being in a sukkah. Kamash 1, there's no difference if it's for the top or below, above, doesn't make any difference. The din is the same, that you're okay, whether it's by a bed, by a kila, because again, there's no time that an oil arai can be mevatel an oil kev. Okay, question 10. Simple question. Are you allowed to sleep in a sukkah underneath a kila? So certainly, according to Rabbi Yehuda, the answer is yes. Now, according to the two Lashonos, it makes a difference. A kila which has a roof, so we said it's totally if it's not 10 tefachim, it's mutter. It's more than 10, it's a machlokas. Kilas chasanim, where the roof is slanted, it's mutter even though it's above 10. However, v'im yesh lo gag, if there has a roof, the kilas chasanim has a roof, then ein taisis divrei maskil uvilvad. Okay. Let's see the next Mishnah. What's actually a Mishnah we saw already. Hidlel at the kefin, that's the dalas, that's the kisus. Sichal gaba psul. So let's say you had these vines that are attached to the ground, and they're grapevines, gourd vines, ivy vines, and you throw it on top, and you mix it together with the schach. It's psul. Why? Says Rashi. You can't use something which is still attached to the ground. It has to be tolish. The Yomi Mars, we'll see in tomorrow's daf. Plus it says it has to come from the solar, from the silos, from the wine presses. Which is mashma, says Rashi, it has to be the leftovers. So therefore it's obviously something which is already tolish detached. However, if let's say there's more schach and therefore it's going to be batal barov, these vines, or she cuts some share, or you cut them even afterwards, it's not a problem. Even though when you put it up originally, it was done improperly because it was attached. So you cut it and that's good enough. Zekla. This is the general rule. Kol or kol davar shehu mekabel tuma v'gidul min haaretz ein mesachin bo. Anytime you have schach, which is makabel tumah, like metal, or something which does not grow from the ground, you can't use it as schach. However, chol davar she'ein makabel tumah v'gidula min haaretz mesachin bo. Here it's not or, it's and. Here we require two things. It has to be not makabel tumah, and the schach also has to be something that comes from the ground. So Yosef Rav Yosef came to Rav Huna, he was sitting Yosef Kaimer. Oshi katsasang shera. All he says is based on the Mishnah when it says, or if you cut it, it's kosher. On this, v'omer Rav sarcha nadeya. Again, you had the branches and they were mechubal karka, it's puzzle. So you cut them off. So it sounds like that's enough. According to the Shita Rav, no, you have to shake it as though to like lift it up and put it down, because there's an issue of based on the pasuk Sukkos tasa. So we went out tasa below mina asur. It has to be done properly when you put it down. It can't be that it was put on improperly and then you cut it off. Similarly, if let's say you have just a frame and then you put schach on top and then you build the walls around it, that's also not good. That's tasa below mina asur. Whereas we're going to see also if you have a haystack and you dig a hole in the haystack and all of a sudden you have a kosher sukkah, so that's not a sukkah. So that's the sheet of Rav. Amalei Rav Huna, he says Hashmuel Amra. I thought it was Shmuel that said this, not Rav. So how do Rav Yosef laugh? So Rav Yosef turned his face like out of anger, as Rashi says, because to think that, you know, I was quoting the name of Rav, and I told him his name is Shmuel. Yermali atu what? Mi kaminalach delo Amar Shmuel, Amar Rav Amar Shmuel. I wasn't saying that you're wrong. that Rav doesn't say this. Okay, I agree. Rav said, but I'm telling you maybe what Shmuel also says. Rav and Shmuel. So Malay says, understand. Rav Huna Hakimino. That's what I'm to say. The Shmuel Omra V'lo Rav. Only Shmuel said it and not Rav. The Rav Akshri Machshir. Actually, Rav doesn't require you to lift it up or do anything. Only the sheet of Shmuel. How do we see this? Kihad the Rav Amram Chasida. We find by Rav Amram Rama Techilta L'Parzuma de Anshe Beisa, that he put Tchelas on the garment of his wife. So according to him, he was of the opinion that his wife had to wear tzitzis. Why? After all, I thought women, as it says in Kedushin Chavtes, the mitzvah Saseh Shazman Grama, a mitzvah which is positive and time bound, women are pater. So Rashi says that according to him, it's actually a mitzvah Shaloi Zman Grama, because he feels that nighttime is actually a Zman of tzitzis. When the pasuk says Yerisem also, is Pra'uk Susuma. It's only coming to exclude a blind person who is physically incapable of seeing. However, a garment at night, taka, you do have to wear. So therefore, just as a sidebar, he felt it was a chiyuv for women to wear tzitzis. So on this, the Gemara continues. Talon, so you hung them up. V'pasak Roshi Chutin Shalahan. However, he did not cut the Roshi Chutin. He didn't cut the strings. So let's see if we have a picture over here. Okay, I'll get to that in a second. I have a picture. So he didn't cut the tips of the strings. So also committed the Rav Chia Barashi Amrulei Hakim Rav. Rav says Mafsakan Hamakshar. Cutting it is going to makshar. Alma Psikasan Zusiyasa. Just cutting it is enough. So Hakanami Kasisasan Zusiyasa. He must hold, according to Rav, that all you have to do is cut it off, and that is sufficient. So according to the pshat of this, it looks like what he did was he put one string, and you can see this, and he kept wrapping it around, and then afterwards he cut those strings off right there. And l'chayra, that wasn't done properly. You're supposed to insert 4 strings and double them over, not one string like this. So by cutting it, you would think maybe it's not sufficient. So he says no, because it's just the awesome. Just cutting it off is enough. So it must be so too when it comes to Sukkah. You cut those vines, so that's good enough. You don't actually have to lift up the schach. So therefore, according to Rav, he's of the opinion that you do not need to be landanei. Okay. V'savar Shmuel Lormin V'sikasan Sisiyasan. Are you telling me that Shmuel doesn't agree to that? V'atani Shmuel Misham Rav Chia. Shmuel says, also regarding tzitzis, Hitul Shnei Karanais V'vasachas. Let's say a person takes 2 of the 4 corners, and he does it all at the same time. V'achach Pasek Rashi Chutin Shel Heng Sharon. And all you do is cut the Rashi Chutin with kosher. So now we refer to this picture right here. So you have the 2 corners, and what he's basically doing is all he's going to do is cut them off. So it seems very similar to this other circumstance where all you need to do is see customs as fiyasa. So not only does Rav hold this, even Shmuel must hold this. So where it says, "My love, first you tied it, and then afterwards you cut it." Actually, you did everything properly. First you cut it off, and then afterwards you did the kshira. So if that's the case, what's the chiddush, right? You didn't do any, you did everything properly, right? So why would we say that would even think that's a problem? So Manatema, as we continue in Yud Aleph Amid Beis, you would think Be'inan Knaf Nashas Psil V'Leika Kamash Mulan. You would think they actually have to put the string in the corner at that time, and not that it should be together. It says Rashi, when you tie it and you put it into these corners, each one has to be done separately. Kamash Mulan, it's not an issue. However, the way that we're reading it is that it's not an issue of Psikasn Zesiyasan, because you really did everything properly, because you didn't do the kshira first. First you cut it, then you tied the knots. Meisvei, I'll ask you a question. Tolan, you hung them up on as tzitzis. It sounds like it's always possible. If it's yufta the Rab. Rab just says all I have to do is cut it. That's not enough. So look, Rab, my psulim ad shivsiku. It's possible until you cut it. Once you cut it, according to him, it's good. Now, according to this, Shmuel says it's possible oilam because just like you have to be lananeya, just detaching the vines is not enough, and that's not enough either, and therefore it's possible completely. Some say like this. To me, such a circumstance happened. So again, it's, we see Shmuel does not agree with Rav whether psikas is yasser. First of all, it says pretty explicit. It says that you hang it up and then you cut it. It says it's possible, right? Which l'chayra is a kasha. It sounds like it's possible forever. Furthermore, tanya gabi sukkah. So again, we're finally being introduced to this concept that you have to make sure that when you put the skach up, everything has to be done properly at that moment and not after that you fix it. From here we learn it says that if you would put the skach on in this way, it's possible. So it's a davar pashut, seeming like the shita Shmuel. It's a heichidam. If this mission is talking about you didn't cut it off, so my iri mishum tasman asoy. Obviously, these branches had to have been cut off. These vines had to have been cut off. Because if they were not cut off, we wouldn't say the issue is tasman and asoy, which is mashima looks fine. The problem is that it's mechuber. So it must be it was definitely cut off. It was cut off. Nonetheless, we we still see that it's possible even though you cut off. This is the question of Rav, because we see that just cutting it off is not enough. When do we say, what are we talking about? That it was already partially cut, and now it's not recognizable what's going on. So we'll look at Rashi. What is this talking about? And we'll see a picture. It says that it was like partially detached. Since the cutting off was not recognizable kokach, because it's still like dangling, so that's not considered to be an asiyah. So because of this issue, we look at this picture over here, it looks that it's still attached, but if you look at the tree, that is really mostly cut off completely from the tree. It's mostly completely cut from the tree, except from there's a little gash, but it's still hanging onto the tree. So if a person would look at it, he would actually think that it's still attached to the tree, but the truth is it's not. This is not considered to be an issue of mechuber, but it's an issue of tasel and asun. And therefore that's the reason why we say it's an issue. And where it says rule in second. How does that answer our question? We call makom togaf pasa kasha rav. The other case, as we said, is a kasha on rav. So kasha, in fact, that is an issue. So actually, let's go to question 11. Question 11. Tasel and asun. Mekan amru hidulet gemna delas psul. Case in the Yashiv Rav. How did Rav explain this brisa according to the Shita? So we say again, we're talking about a case that the cutting off was not completely done from the tree, and therefore the ketzitza is not recognizable, and therefore that's not in the CML Yasa. However, when it came to tzitzis, where it says Polam Yakach Pasak Rashi Chutin Shalhen Pasal, which is the Kashna Rav, because he holds Ksisas and Siyasa. So Psula sounds like Pasal oil. It's not Tiyofta, because you could say maybe Pasal is, again, until it's cut off. Okay. Kitanai. Abra v'likta. So let's say, as Rashi says, you violated and you plucked them, which is referring to the Inve Hadas, the berries that are found on a myrtle. The sun will come on. We'll see in the third parak. If when it comes to Hadas, if there's more leaves, more berries and fruits on it than the leaves, that is possible. For it to be beautified, it has to have more leaves than these berries. So therefore you think, okay, so I'll just pluck them off. If you pluck them off, there won't be more than the leaves. Says Rashi, miyuto kosher, or in matim b'yomtiv. You're not allowed to pluck them off on yomtiv itself. To masakin mana, l'hakshir sapsul. Since it's possible and they're going to make it kosher, you're fixing it clean. Not to be allowed to masakin mana on the yomtiv. V'tani b'braisa, over al divrei chachamim. Let's say you violated this psak. Shover in v'matim b'yomtiv, v'loftim b'yomtiv possible. Let's go back to the Gemara. So Amr Loftim Possible. Divrei Reb Shimon ben Yehusta. Chachamim machshir. So we have a machlokus on Yom Tov. You're not supposed to take those berries off to minimize that in comparison to the amount of leaves. But if you did so, the question is it possible or kosher? So we have a machlokus. What's the basis of the machlokus? So Savru Nikol Yamul Sarach Eged. We think first of all a lulav and hadas and the rubber all have to be tied together. The alfin and lulav the sukkah, and we learn out lulav from sukkah. What's that? Chsib gabi sukkah tatam and asoi my lab hakim ivni. Demand the masher savar amrinan gabi sukkah sasas ziyasa suha siyasa. Gabi lulav nami amrinan l'kitasas ziyasa. Man the apostle savar amrinan gabi sukkah sasas ziyasa. Gabi lulav nami amrinan l'kitasas ziyasa. So again, we see this must be the Machlokes Tanoim. You have the lulav and the hadas and the rub; they're all tied together. And when you tie it together, just like the Succah, everything has to be done properly. So the question is, if you remove the berries, why is it possible? Okay, Masakin Mana. So the problem is it's Tasmum and Asur, because it was already tied, which was necessary, and all of a sudden you start removing them, so it can't become kosher now. You have to have removed them before you tied it. So the question is just removing it enough, or just like Sarach and Aneh, you have to lift up and move the Succah, so too maybe you have to untie it and then tie it again. Everyone holds like Shmuel. No one holds that by Sukkah, Gabi Sukkah, that Kisyasin is Ziyasa. V'hach b'mel v'lul Masukah connected. Manda machshir savar lo yalfi v'lul Masukah. According to the Shita, according to one Shita, he doesn't learn lulav from Sukkah. So even though it's true, when it comes to Sukkah, the truth is you have to lift it up, but not by, maybe that's not the case by lulav. We don't say that ksisas is siyasa. That's one. That's another shot. So it's not necessarily Machlokes Tanoim whether you hold Siyasan and Siyasan. It could be that everyone holds like Shmuel that we don't say that. It's just the Machlokes whether we learn out when it comes to lulav, whether that then applies as well. If you hold it, the lulav needs to be tied. And you learn out from Sukkah, and therefore there would be an issue of Tasman also, even by lulav. So the Hakva commits to the Machlokes is where it needs to be tied. And therefore, if it doesn't need eggs, if you remove it, it's not a problem. And that actually is a Machlokes Tanoim. The Sanya, lulav being agud, being sheinu agud kosher. Whether it's tied or not, it's kosher. Yehuda Omer, no. Agud kosher, sheinu agud possible. If it's not tied together, the lulav and hadas, when the hadas and the rava, that's possible. So my term, Yehuda. Why does Yehuda say such a din? Yovel kicha me'agudis ezoi. He learns out when it comes to the Gzer Shava, when it comes to the tying of the azo, the hyssop, that all these different items need to be tied together. Siv hasam l'kaftem agudis azo, that you need to tie it all together. and this is brought down in Shmos Yud Beis, which is referring to the Parshas Bo. So the fact that we have the Gzer Shava, Malhun Begudah, Kanam Begudah. So we learn out from the Agudas Ezoiv that just like over there everything had to be tied together, so to over here everything had to be tied together. The Rabbanu Kifim Yalfinim, they don't have such a Gzer Shava. So who is the following brayso like? Lulav mitzvah l'agdai, v'lo adu kosher. Seir Yehuda kilo adu my kosher. Why would you say it? You wouldn't say it's kosher if it's not tied. He says it's possible. But he Rabbana my mitzvah. Rabbana say you don't have to do it at all. So why would it say mitzvah? No, the old Rabbana means. And Mishon shenem is zekelu dan veyu. He son of the mitzvahs. The way to beautify the mitzvahs, and therefore Taki they hold it is a mitzvah to do so, to tie it together. If you're able to do it, but if you don't, Sama Akiv, and therefore according to this shot, if you remove the branches, the berries of the Hadass on Yom Tov, so it's not an issue because even though it's tied, it doesn't have to be tied. So it's not an issue Tassim and Asui regarding to this thing. Okay. Question 12. In the Hadass she'avra b'loktim Yom Tov b'may community tanai e kosher. So there's three answers. Whether if you say sarach eged and it's again shaykh, if you hold it sarach eged, let's say you hold that, and the whole question is an issue of tasman and asoy, and do we say like kitasan siyasan, or maybe by sukkah for sure we do say tasman and asoy, and we say ksisasan loy siyasan like Shmuel, and the question is do we learn out lulav from sukkah, or do we just hold stam? Is there an Indian of eged at all? TA 21. He says that we're noying, that we sleep underneath a bed in a sukkah. So my time shall Rabbi Yehuda, that he's a din loindin is that. So according to him, he feels lo asi ol arai umavato oil kava. And because of this, a person is allowed to sleep under a kila, even though it may have a roof, and even if it is above 10 tefachim. Question TB 23. Elobes Tami Yishlamar Baha to Mater Bihu Delishan Tachas Basukah. So one reason, as we said, this is kind of a similar answer, is because Lo Asi Ol Arai Mavatal Oil Keva. That's one shot. Alternatively, you can say because the mita is on the top, and therefore it's obviously not going to create an ohel. But we end up saying that's not the reason. It's because of Lo Asi Ol Arai Mavatal Oil Keva.